Hey folks, don't mind the sun in my face. I wanted to talk about some of the must-have performance mods for your 7.3 Power Stroke. Now that's not what I'm driving today. Today I'm driving the old F-150. Just because I was too lazy to take the car seats out and put them in the F350. Or the car for that matter. But, so let's get started. I guess if you got yourself an old 7.3 Power Stroke diesel, there's a few really important mods that really change the way the truck drives. Like, absolutely night and day difference. The first one, and I know it's going to be kind of controversial because some people go, oh my god, you need that, it was designed to have that. And I'm telling you this now, I bought the truck at 260,000 kilometers. I don't know what that would be miles. I would have to sit and try to think about doing the math. But it's got 390, just over 390,000 on it now. And I've been driving it almost this entire time with a welded wastegate. So what you do is, when you take your turbo out off the pedestal, you would take the actuator and you pull that as far forward as you can. If you grab a pair of pair of vice grips, and grab it and pull it like as hard as you can so you're closed. It doesn't need to be perfect. We're not talking about fucking actually opening the turbo up and welding the inside. You're just welding the actuator shut, right? So you would pull it shut and then throw a bead along one of the sides. There's a few reasons why you'd want to throw that weld there. Number one is if you decide that you're a little scared, you don't want to do it for long, you can just cut it off and there's no harm to the turbo. You just fucking grind out that one weld. Number two is that weld is going to hold all of the pressure that if you decide to leave your wastegate on, it'll hold it. There's not going to be a problem. Number three, you're not welding where there's been exhaust gases. We're talking about, oh god. We're talking about relatively clean steel onto kind of rusty steel. And you can just grind the rust off the steel, that's fine. The next big thing you can do once you've done that is your exhaust back pressure valve. This is the back side of the turbo. This, when you take the turbo off, all I did is I took an arbor bit on a turbo, because that's what I had on hand. I didn't have a grinder that would fit into that. Like, the hole isn't very big. And you grind the rivets off. And then you pull the butterfly out, you grind the heads of the rivets off, push them out with a push pin, and you pull your butterfly out, and then you drop your pin out, and I think it's a 3/4 inch bolt is what fits in its place. Now what I did was I took my 3/4 inch bolt, and I cut the head in half so it didn't protrude very much in, and just clamp that bushing that it rides on with the bolt head inside of inside of the turbo, and you'll be in good shape. Now, and then the next thing you want to do after that is going to be a turbo pedestal. Get one that doesn't have the actuator. I ended up buying one without an actuator because mine was leaking. Mine was leaking out of the actuator. I don't know how, but it was. It was leaking a bunch of oil at the end of the actuator. Okay, so I bought a pedestal that didn't have an actuator, and that gave me the excuse to do it. But just doing those few things, like I think the pedestal without an actuator, I think that was $80 or $90 on Rock Auto. A bolt is, I think, $1.60. A nut's going to be another 40 cents. So you're going to be a couple of dollars into that. Given if you have to buy the arbor bits are like $90 each for a nice tungsten arbor bit. I'm sure there's other things you could do. You could probably drill it out. The O-ring kits, they're like $6 on Amazon. And I mean, if you have a flux core welder, which is what I run, and I actually should do a video on how to use a flux core welder, because it's kind of wild. People just don't know how to use them. It's kind of hilarious, but yeah. Anyways, so that is probably the biggest thing you can do for your 7.3 to completely change the way it drives. I'm not saying the way it runs, I'm saying the way it drives, because now all of a sudden, like, literally, like, and you're just driving around, and you can be in boost in a split second, even with the factory wheel. Now, I put a Wicked Wheel 2 on mine. A, because I wanted a little bit more turbo noise. Between that, and then I did a like a homemade cold air intake and a big cone filter, right? So that's things that I did. They're just like, but I did a lot of things that add a little bit to add up to a lot, right? And I'll talk more about the little things, but that turbo is the biggest thing you can do to change the way the truck runs. That, and then I would say one of those TS 6-position tuners. That's what I run. I freaking love it. Yeah, I love it. It is so good. It's so easy to install. Like, it's, and we're talking like, so my engine is a 2001. Given the truck isn't, but that's what the engine is. That's what the ECU is. The IBM, like the entire running system is all 2001. But if you did that to your earlier model 7.3 Power Stroke, where you welded the wastegate shut, that would, you'd see a huge difference in that too. Now, there's a few other things that I've done to the truck that made, like, it's like I said, a lot of little things. That's a lot, right? Going to the cone filter instead of a box filter, running steel cold air intake, right? And then I run a 3.5-inch downpipe. Now, to run the 3.5-inch downpipe on a 97 cab, I had to cut a hole in my firewall. Yeah, I found where it was rubbing, cut a hole. Then I went to an old box and I cut a section a little bit bigger than what I cut off, and I bent it outwards so it protruded to the inside of the cab, welded it to the inside so my cab is sealed back up again, and then I siliconed it and painted it white. Put my floor mat back down, cherry. Now, ooh, I'm speeding. That's one of those things, a lot adding to a little. So there's another one you can buy. You can buy, I think it's a Spectra pump. I had to try and find the part number. You can find it on Rock Auto. I do a lot of Rock Auto orders, but only when I'm doing big orders. If you're doing 1 or 2 parts here and there, the shipping costs too much, and you may as well go to Amazon and try and find it on Prime, or you find it locally. But you can buy a high performance, it's not crazy performance, but it's a high performance pump. It's 15% over, and so the company claims that it's 15% more PSI, it's 15% more gallons per minute. Okay, cool. That's the one I bought. It wasn't that expensive. It was $68 Canadian with the shipping, but I also bought a couple other things at the same time, so I don't know what my total cost on that was. But I installed that, and now my, like I was saying, that TS6 position, I run it not on 1 but on 2, and that's normally just a high idle. And with the pump and the turbo, now I used to own the 2004 6-liter, and I had a Diablo tuner in that thing. I had a boost fooler in it. I had a 4-inch downpipe in that. That was a pain in the ass. But that truck, I had a bunch of work in that. I had an adjustable fuel pressure regulator. I had the cold air on that. I like the EGR delete. It wasn't bad. The adjustable fuel pressure regulator was one of the bigger things I did to that truck. But that was, now driving the old 7.3, even though it's stick, hauling, it's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely nuts. You're just cruising around, and it's like it's not even there. Now you will notice your fuel mileage goes down a little bit putting a bigger fuel pump in. That's the only thing that I didn't like. And it's not crazy amounts. Like it takes me about a quarter of a tank to get out to town and back. But it takes me a couple hours to get to town and back. So I'm probably sitting at about $8 per hour right now in terms of driving. And I like equating it to time. And a large part of the reason is because it doesn't matter if it's 60 kilometers or it's 100 kilometers. If it's an hour, it's an hour, and it seems to suck up the amount of fuel it sucks up in an hour, which is hilarious. But that's one of the things. That's another one. that BB mod in the back of the fuel pressure regulator, that makes a huge difference. That one is ridiculously good. There's lots of videos on YouTube on it, but you pull your fuel pressure regulator off, pull the spring out, you put a BB on the spring, you put your fuel pressure regulator back in. Now, a large part of what it does is if you're running an older engine, those springs get a little fatigued from all the fuel pressure being pressed up against them, because that's what it is. It backs a plunger on your fuel bowl, so all your fuel pressure pushes up against it, so it gets a little fatigued over time. But no matter what, even if it was a brand new fuel spring, it would make a big difference as well. But even as an old spring, it probably, I would say, is still better than the factory spring. And it just basically makes it so there's less that gets bypassed back to the tank. It bumps your fuel pressure up during all RPMs, and it's pretty good too. That's a quick way to bring your EGTs down. And it's like the throttle response is a little bit quicker. It does pretty good. So just those two mods, you can do them almost for free, and you completely change the way the truck drives. Climbing hills, it's not like accelerating on the highway. It's not a dog at all after those two things, and it's because you change where it builds power. The turbo is the biggest part, because at idle, like, you're not building any boost, and those diaphragms aren't very much pressure. Like, I think there's 7 pounds of spring pressure, so 7 pounds of exhaust pressure will start opening it on its own without any boost pressure. So that's part of the reason why I didn't like them. And I tried to adjust it, and it's like it doesn't work with Dick. But yeah, it's like I said, like those two things there are going to completely change the way the truck drives. Now you add a few little things, like I said, the downpipe, the cone filter, and we can talk about things like, yeah, and the exhaust back pressure valve. That's a pretty big one as well. I'm sure I did the exhaust back pressure valve at the same time I did I welded my wastegate shut. And the other thing is, if you drive it like it's a fucking race car, it's gonna blow up. It will eventually blow up. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you're beating the heck out of something, it's eventually gonna give up on you. And I don't. Like, I've got a big set of stacks on the truck and all that jazz, but I just drive it because I can't afford to drive it like it's a race truck. That, and I can't afford to fucking replace all the parts all the time. God damn it. My truck, I actually ended up putting a transmission in it, and it was a ZF6. I killed the ZF6, but I kind of killed the ZF6. The hoses chafed on the frame, and it blew a hole in it right next to the starter. So it poured all the fluid out. So I had a bunch of metal shavings, and I actually had a piece of a bearing race come out. It was, yeah, that was gross. But anyways, so those are pretty good. So like, yeah, the tuner, the downpipe, the pedestal, the exhaust back pressure valve, the wicked wheel. Oh, and there's another one. At some point I decided I wanted to try and see if I can get anything better out of increasing flow to the turbo. So I took the front housing off the inducer side, and I used the Dremel, and I ported the shit out of it, so then, like, you don't have that machine lip that runs the entire circle, because there's that little flat lip, and I wanted to smooth that out as best I could, and I did a good job. It looks like, it doesn't look like a machine did it. It looks like someone did a port and polish job, and that made quite a big difference in the amount of turbo noise you hear. That was kind of weird. Like, that was the biggest difference I noticed there. Is like, I definitely hear, I hear way more turbo noise after that. But yeah, between that, and then you do the fuel pressure, and then you do the fuel pump. What else can we think of? I'm sure there's other things I've done, but those are some pretty major things. I was contemplating the idea of actually running the older style fuel filter and putting on an external regulator so I can control the fuel pressure right there. But yeah, like, if you got yourself a 7.3 and you think it's a dog and you're worried about reliability, it really comes down to the way you drive. It really does. Like, if you go and you weld the wastegate shut and you're just like, I want to see how much boost I can make, woo! Which I actually did. And this is the thing that, like, before you go spending, and this is the other thing, before you go spending thousands of dollars on upgrading your turbo, maximize the parts you've got. I'm looking at some of these turbos that don't even have wastegates on it for performance applications. And, like, wastegates are an afterthought, right? Turbo diesels that didn't run wastegates have been around longer and still are produced than turbos with wastegates, right? Like, but that being said, oh, I should have sped up a little for this hill. This old F-150 doesn't like hills. Actually, not bad. We're still doing the speed limit. But yeah, like, driving that truck, like, if I go into the highway and I really want to wind her out, I hit 28 PSI. 20 fucking 8. And I can wrap the speedo in that truck. It's fucking wild. It's fun. But at 28 PSI, like, I think I hit around 24 or 25 and the check engine light comes on. But that's what, like, you can maximize your turbo and get more out of it. And that's the thing I never liked about fucking, when people talk about building their trucks and it's already turbocharged and already this and this. You can maximize what you have before you start adding performance parts that are going to cost you thousands of dollars. A fuel pump, a fuel pressure regulator, or an adjustment to a fuel pressure regulator, those two things are going to do wonders for your injectors, right? Now, I don't think there's anything you do for your H-pump. Oh, there's actually another one I did that I forgot about. And I have a video of it. The 3-line H-pump line. So you go from 2 lines to 3 lines. Now that one I didn't notice very much off the get-go. But I did notice a large change in my throttle response. That is nice. And when I let off, like, if I'm coming down a hill and I let off the throttle and I've got it, like, holding itself back going downhill or whatever, when I go to push the clutch in to apply the brakes or whatever, if I'm in my last gear, like if I get back into first and I'm coming to a full stop, push the clutch in, it used to be it would, like, idle down really hard and it didn't want to respond coming back up. That's almost completely gone. There's almost nothing of that. Just push the clutch in and she just runs like one. And that's really good. And then when you go to accelerate, the throttle response is better. And I think that is something, like, it is a mechanical change, right? I think what's happening there is because you equalize the pressure between both cylinders, or between both heads, you're basically making oil pressure available at all times to both cylinders, or cylinder heads. So when you let off, when you go back to accelerate, there isn't one bank with more fuel or oil pressure than the other. The other thing you can do, that's another small adjustment, and this one's a little bit more intimate. On the front of the head, there's 2 banjo bolts, and they're your fuel bolts. And I think there is one of the Paul Diesel guy, I can't remember what his name was, he did a video on them. And you can take those banjo bolts out and don't drill it out bigger. Because if you do, your banjo bolt isn't going to seal. Because the hole is made the right size for the ridge on the inside. What you want to do is you want to ovalize it. Widthways ovalize it. And the idea being that instead of it being a hole like this, it's going to be a slot that you've lengthened out now. And that helps as well. And that doesn't, like, that doesn't increase the amount of fuel you get. That just makes more fuel available when you go to put some throttle into it. Because otherwise, when you're accelerating, you're using X amount of fuel pressure when you accelerate, and your fuel pressure is going to basically stay the same, but the gallons that are, like, your GPM available is going to be restricted by a few things. Line size is a big one. I've contemplated a few times going to, like, an AN style fitting, or putting fittings on it and then running something like a 3/8 line or something for fuel to the actual lines, and then running that from tank all the way front. So no matter what, it's the same size the entire way. But I think that might be a little intimate for the truck right now. But I was getting at something there. all you're doing is you're making more you're making more fuel available when you put your foot on the throttle, right? And that's even like at little amounts of throttle. And it's very similar to like when you've got a carburetor and your float is full and you go and you romp on it, your accelerator pump plunges a bunch of fuel down to make up for the difference that that your jets need to keep on operating, right? Otherwise you would just empty the bowl, right? Instead, what happens? Your plunger pushes a bunch, that takes up the gap, and then the bowl continues to fill. Now, kind of similar, all fuel systems, like when you romp on it or you give it a little gas, let's say you're pulling a trailer coming downhill and you're completely off the throttle, and then you need to go on the throttle to make it up the next hill, right? The idea being, when you're coming down the hill, you've got lots of fuel ready to go. And your pressure regulator is probably working at the point where it's probably sending 25-30% of fuel back to the tank. Then when you go up the next hill, you're going harder on the throttle. You're going to deplete the amount of fuel that you actually have available before it has a chance to recuperate. Now, it's not going to be much. It's not going to be a big difference. Like, we're talking like the difference of maybe a second or two. But that second or two is going to be the difference of whether or not you accelerate going up the hill, or now you got a downshift and you're barely making it up at highway speeds. And that's what I mean. Like, so like all these little things amount to a lot, right? We're talking little changes, and little changes. But if you're talking like a 0.5, a 0.5, a 0.5, and a 0.5, those amount to one big thing. And it's like I said, maximize the engine the way that it is, right? Don't go and buy a set of stage 1 injectors or stage 2 or 3 injectors before you go maximizing the fueling system you've got, so then the injectors you have work efficiently and well. Same thing with the turbo. Before you go and spend $1,000 or $2,000 on a KC, or not a KC, was it a KC? I can't remember. But before you go and spend a couple $1,000 on a fucking aftermarket turbo, maximize the one you got. You'll be very pleasantly surprised, and then maybe it may change your mind. And then the worst part is once you do it, I don't know if like your stage 1 or your stage 1.5 turbo is going to be better with a wicked wheel, no exhaust back pressure valve, and no wastegate. Don't mind me. I keep on getting a bunch of phlegm in my throat first thing in the morning. But yeah, I mean, and that's what I mean. Think outside the box a little bit. You'd be very pleasantly surprised. The other side too is you can still get the parts. Oh shit! You can still get the parts fairly cheap to replace, right? So let's say you need to replace your turbo in 100,000 K. You're not buying a whole nother $1,000 turbo. You're buying a couple $100 cartridge. Makes a big difference. But anyways, that's my 23-minute rant. Y'all have a good day. Bye for now.